Hey everyone, and welcome to the Uncorked Corner podcast, where we cover the full spread of food and beverage industry topics. My name is Bianca, PR and marketing professional by day, and food and wine connoisseur by night.
And my name is Nick, an accountant with a passion for barbecue, beer, and whiskey. Today we welcome back Julia Halina Hadas. Julia is the author of Witchcraft Cocktails that is now available. You can find the links in the description below. We've featured Julia on our podcast before. If you haven't listened to that, go back, listen to a previous episode, and definitely pick up a copy of the book. There's a lot of great cocktails in there.
Absolutely. And in today's episode, Julia takes us through some Halloween cocktails that she created for the season. These cocktails fit the Halloween season perfectly, but are great throughout the year as well. We provide recipes, tasting notes, and the energies associated with each of these cocktails, as well as get into some fun candy pairings.
And if you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to us. With that said, let's welcome Julia back to the show.
Welcome to the show. Today we are so excited to have our friend Julia back from Witchcraft Cocktails. We are going to be walking through some exciting new cocktails. So if you want to just reintroduce yourself quick so everybody knows who you are and your book, because in case anybody hasn't listened yet, you have a great book out there. And then we'll get into the cocktails.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, you guys. So for anyone who doesn't know, my name is Julia Halina Hadas. I am a practicing witch, craft cocktail bartender, and worked in a distillery. And so I've combined my craft cocktail and witchcraft practices to make magically delicious drinks.
Magically delicious. I love that.
I stole that from someone who left the review of my book. I won't lie, it was great.
Hey, why not, right? They gave it to you. So today we're here to talk about Halloween specific cocktails. This episode, we're recording it the Wednesday of Halloween week. Halloween's this Saturday. We're going to be releasing this on the Thursday. So if you're listening to this now, you can make some of these if you're doing any Halloween Zoom calls, parties, throw some in a flask to bring with you trick-or-treating, whatever you need to do. But we have 4 cocktails here that Julia was kind enough to craft. They're all different, so something for everybody here. I personally made 2 of them, so I could try a couple, and I'll probably end up making all 4 by the end of the week. But let's start by having you take us through each of these 4 cocktails and the names of them and just kind of the basic ingredients, what's going to be in them, without going too much into detail. We'll break it down a little bit later in the episode.
Perfect. I love it. Because I was like, if we're going to start out front with that, we're going to be here for a while. But just quick summary, I wanted to create a simpler type cocktail using ghost tequila, which is such a fitting name for this time of year. So I'm calling it Black Sun after the song by Audio Slave. But with tequila, just a nice rejuvenating, it's a hex breaking, protective, and purifying margarita variation with blood orange. Then we have the Witch's Wand, which is a variation or riff off of an appletini with some more witch aesthetics and associations in it. As we know, lots of witches, or if you watch Harry Potter, have wands. And so I try to incorporate things like bourbon that's associated with, has oak, aged in oak barrels, apples, super magical, walnut, just a lot of magical witching herbs to craft a cocktail for wishes, blessings, abundance, and magic. Then we have what are you calling that cocktail again? The
Coffee Ouija
yes.
Martini.
I hadn't settled on a name yet, but we have a coffee Ouija martini, which is basically, a variation of a coffee martini with lots of additions that's supposed to, like, as the name would insinuate, inspired by spirit communication and divination for this Samhain. So a little bit of coffee.
I'll be visiting
absinthe.
my sleep tonight. It'll be fun.
Yes. And then I created I have a variation of kind of like a pumpkin spice cocktail in my book, but for today I decided to create a brand new variation. So you have 2 options to choose from, but a pumpkin spice martini with a little bit of almond amaretto, pumpkin spice syrup from Proof Syrups, as well as cinnamon and a bit of milk.
So Bianca, since she just kind of led us right into it, do you want to tell us a little bit about Proof Syrups real quick and some of the ones that they sent you over to try and how you can use those in these cocktails?
Absolutely. So I know we haven't all gotten a chance to try them yet, but I have been the lucky one. Got their delivery. So I have had my Proof Syrups here, and what Nick and I were excited about when we get to try these was that they have some cool fall flavors. I know a lot of different mixers aren't necessarily seasonal. So we were really excited about the pumpkin spice and the maple bacon and the pecan and the black walnut especially. And I know that you are going to be using some of these in your cocktails, which is awesome. But Proof is a mix-in company that does all sorts of different flavors, really interesting ones. For anybody who's not familiar, we will add their tag to the show notes, and we will include them in photos after the show. But definitely worth checking out for anybody who's interested in those seasonal kind of mix-ins.
And in case you can't get those and you have a liquor store at your disposal that just has regular bitters and simple syrup and stuff, we have different variations of the recipes too that you can craft. I know that's what we did to kind of make these in essence, but also ones that you can use those cocktail mixers to sort of cut some corners on them. But we'll show it both ways a bit so that you can have an easy way of setting these up. So another thing that I wanted to get into, and we'll kind of work our way through these. We'll talk through the couple that I made. Julia, did you prepare any for this podcast? Are you drinking one right now?
I'm drinking the pumpkin spice martini, but I did bring all of my stuff up here. So if we need to make any on this spot, I am prepared.
Well, I have made the Black Sun and I have made the Coffee Ouija Martini. So that gets us 3 of them at least, and maybe we can do a live cocktail mixing a little bit later with Witch's Wand as well, if you have the stuff for that, and that would be a lot of fun too. But to kind of talk through the ones that we have now, I made the Black Sun Martini, margarita, I should say, with the Ghost Tequila. It's guess I've had too much of it already. It's 1.5 ounces of Ghost Tequila. You can really use any tequila and maybe add in a little bit of pepper. I went crazy and I used the Ghost Tequila and added some pepper to kind of get a little bit of extra heat right, down in that chest and throat with that Ghost Pepper Tequila. It's not overly spicy if you're worried about that, but it gives it a nice heat. And I also added some hot cayenne pepper powder into the drink too and mixed it up so you have a little bit more of heat on your mouth as well, which, as you know from some people that we've talked to before, I am spice crazy and make things as spicy as they possibly can be. Also in this, you have 1 ounce of lime. I use fresh squeezed lime, 1/2 ounce of agave syrup, 1 ounce of blood orange juice. If you don't have that, I went to my local Hannaford's up here in Maine, and I was able to find blood orange lemonade, which has obviously blood orange and lemon. And I use the same amount of that, and it might give it a slightly different flavor, but just as tasty, I can guarantee it. It's a super, super tasty, not overly sweet. It's not going to kill you, but it's a nice, sweet drink that you can sip on, enjoy, and it'll make you hang on to sort of those, I guess, last days of summer/fall weather that we have before we get into the snow up here in Maine and New England.
I love it. And you know what? I love that you improvised, because I know I put together, sometimes these cocktails with lots of different things in it, but it's really just to show people what they can do. Always improvise and make stuff work for you. And the wonderful thing about blood orange juice, if you can get it, because its season's kind of starting here, is that it's red. So for Halloween especially, it has that nice blood aesthetic, but you can also try replacing it with pomegranate juice to still get that red color. And then you can try doing a black salt rim for an extra special Halloween beverage.
That's something I couldn't find too. Is there a place that you go to get that stuff, or do you order it online? Because it seems like most normal grocery stores, at least around us, don't really have all the crazy salt colors. Like when I go to, there's a place up here called Terlingua that is currently transitioning to a new location. So I haven't been able to eat there in a while since the pandemic started. But they always have a big spread out there with probably, I think, 3 or 4 different colored salts that use in their margaritas. It's Mexican inspired barbecue, so they have a lot of cool cocktails, but I can never know where to find those different salts. So where can you get those?
Yeah, it's one of the things that bothers me because obviously, there's spice shops are usually going to have black salt. So if you have a local spice shop that you can support, do that. That was one of the frustrating things for me because I had black salt and then I misplaced it and then I have to go find it again last minute. And I'm in Safeway, my local grocery store, staring at their long shelf of all of these different types of salts. And there's no black salt. So you can, it's not super expensive. You can get a big bag of it online for maybe $13, and that's something that you can use a lot. You can actually use it inside the cocktail as well, so it doesn't have to just be for the rim. It's used in witchcraft a lot now. There's a big difference between the black salt you would end up buying at a witchcraft shop versus the edible kind. You want the edible kind, but it's multi-use and you can use it for a lot of things. So online would be the primary place if you can't find it at your local spice shop.
And another question I have too, kind of getting into salt in the rim, obviously being sort of at home, just getting into the cocktail game. I have no formal training in this. And if you stick a glass into dry salt, it's not going to stick. So what do you do to the rim of that glass to make the salt stick and hold on a good solid rim?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked this because I was so excited for Halloween in the witching world or Samhain. I'm like, what are all the ways I can make any beverage Halloween? So usually we use something like lime juice. So you can take a wedge of lime and put it around the outside of your glass where you want the salt to be. You can do lemon juice. You can try using an orange wedge as well. Sometimes though, you have to be careful with black salt. The grains can be bigger if they're not fine grained. So you might want to use something like, you can try using a little bit of agave, although that's going to add a lot of sweetness to it, but that's going to hold it in place if you're going just for aesthetic. Additionally, I was kind of thinking, playing around with it, if you reduce grenadine enough, so you let it heat, you can make it at home, really simple. Pomegranate juice, sugar, a little bit of orange blossom water, or you can try adding, a little bit of orange vodka, but obviously be careful because it becomes alcoholic if you're using it for mocktails as well. And you reduce it enough and you get this nice thick syrup that you can, makes it look like blood a little bit. So it might, slowly drip down your glass, but it's a nice Halloween effect. And you can use that for the black salt. Now we'll add a bit of sweetener, but it's a fun, cool look to it.
Definitely adds to it.
And one of the things about your cocktails that makes them so different is that you have those kind of energy properties and the different things that make every cocktail unique. And that's what's so great about your book. And for everybody who hasn't, again, listened to that first episode, definitely check it out because it's very interesting. What is it about the cocktails that you have made this time around for the fall, for Halloween? What are their energetic properties and kind of what makes them special?
Absolutely. So for the Black Sun Spicy Margarita, there's so much going on. So what I do is there's a magical associations for each ingredient that we use in witchcraft. And what you do is you break down, each spirit, what's used in the creation of that liqueur or liquor, and become familiar. You can find information online or a little, Scott Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Herbs and look up what it's associated with. And at the very least, if you're not into witchcraft, you now have a cocktail with a very unique story behind it. So tequila, the base of the Black Sun Spicy Margarita, we have is made from blue agave, and which has a really interesting life cycle. It takes 10 to 20 years for this plant to be ready to harvest. And when it finally does blossom, it has to be harvested very quickly. So it has this interesting life and death cycle. To me, it also symbolizes taking your time, coming to your power and strength. And so it adds particularly kind of this rejuvenation, life, death cycles into this cocktail. We have ghost pepper, which I listened to your Ghost Tequila podcast. And then I also looked online that kind of comes from India and around there. And they would use it for protection, for a lot of healing, but also as a repellent. So it's a nice addition with that. Really protective, rejuvenating. You have the black salt, which is protection as well. Agave syrup is just a natural add for any margarita. And then the blood orange juice. Orange in particular is associated with divination, love, spirituality, well-being. You can think in a lot of Asian traditions, they will give oranges or mandarins as a gift of abundance and well-being. But blood orange has that nice red color that, as its name would make us think, associated with ancestral connections and blood, and we had that nice Halloween element, but also energetically it has this nice cocktail that has to do with rejuvenation and protection, which I think we could all use a little bit of that in 2020.
And when you drink it, it makes you feel good, like most cocktails do. So
Yes.
can't go wrong with that. To get into the other one that I made, and then we'll dive into the appletini, and we can talk about the pumpkin spice one briefly, and then we'll go on to some other things. But I also made this coffee Ouija martini, and this one is a really interesting one because one unique property of it is that it uses absinthe as a rinse for the glass, which adds a if you're familiar with anise or the flavor of anise, it's sort of this licoricey flavor that you use to rinse the glass with. So obviously, again, like I'm saying, I'm not a trained cocktail artist. So I had to do some Googling to figure out how to do this properly. But I took some absinthe that I got at the store. It was about $30 for the 750 milliliter standard size bottle. I swirled it around the glass a bit to kind of coat it. And then I tipped it so it was right along the rim, kind of along the full side of the glass. And I kind of rolled the martini glass around until it fully coated the sides. And then I shook out all the excess so there wasn't too much absinthe sitting there in the bottom. So it didn't affect the flavor too much, because anise is a very strong flavor if you're familiar with that, or a sambuca or anything else that uses it. The rest of the ingredients is gin, walnut bitters. I used black walnut bitters, 1 ounce of coffee liqueur, half ounce of vanilla simple syrup, which I made by using, it was an ounce, or it was a half ounce of the regular plain simple syrup, and I threw in a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract and mixed it around, and then 3/4 cups of coffee. And it is 9 p.m. over here, so I did use a decaf drip coffee, so I'm not up all night. But the flavor, just the same, it came out good. And it is delicious. Now, if you're not into gin, I've made espresso martinis in the past. I know we talked about this on our fire department coffee podcast. I used the Shellback espresso again in that one, but today I went with a decaf variety. And you could also use vodka to make this, so you don't have as much of those floral sort of gin notes. If you're more into sort of a mellow alcohol that doesn't affect the flavor too much, you'll get more of the coffee liqueur and coffee flavors if you use a vodka. So feel free to use a Kettle One or any other, vodka that you want to use to mix in your cocktails. Julia, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the spiritual properties of this one?
Yes, and I love that you mentioned definitely switch it out, you guys. You can do vanilla vodka if you like. And then we also kind of talked about proof syrups. They have a lovely walnut syrup that you can use in replacement of the walnut bitters and the vanilla simple altogether. The nice thing about syrups is that once you make them or have them, you can use them in almost anything. And so it's kind of a fun investment to make there if you wanted to try that. But yeah, this is designed specifically for psychic vision, protection, clarity. So to get more into it, absinthe has a variety of herbs and herbal ingredients in it, particularly anise, which I need to tell myself to pronounce anise all the time. I want to call it anise, but it's anise according to the dictionary. And wormwood. And both of these ingredients are used very heavily in spirit communication. And so this is a great addition for concoctions with psychic abilities, purification, but also has that, clarity addition to it that we kind of want. And it's a great ingredient for bridging the gap between the physical and ethereal realms. So that's why I wanted to put this in this cocktail. I used Orbium gin because this Orbium gin is by Hendrick's Gin. It's a limited edition, seasonal. I only suggest it for people that are gin drinkers because they would love it. But it has extra, wormwood and other gin typical flavors in there. But that's going to be great for grounding, protection, purification, again, psychic abilities. The walnut bitters, we'll talk a little bit more walnut with the apple teeny, which is wand, but it's really good for mental abilities, protection again, granting wishes. And then coffee has a long use of being used in divination. So it already has those associations. It helps, we think of coffee gets you energized, right? Helps you think clearly. Although if you have too much, maybe think a little too fast because it's also energizing. So it's really great for the conscious mind, energy, again, that divination, cleansing. And then vanilla just adds a little more peace and energy and abundance in there. So altogether, this is just filled with psychic ability associations, grounding, and a lot of great associations for power as well and manifestation. And you can add a little bit of cinnamon if you like to add a little dash in there and see how that goes, because that's going to be a great complement to the coffee.
And I'm really excited to try this one because I love gin, and I specifically love Hendrix, but I have not tried the Orbium yet. So I will be going to, as I mentioned, we'll be having a little mini Halloween party with some family on Friday. And I will definitely be getting the ingredients. And I did see that Total One has that Orbium, so I will be there picking that up. I love that. And I think it looks so great. Obviously, Nick made it with some different gin, but it looks really good.
And one thing that I didn't mention that is a really awesome garnish that I just got in my mouth is the 3 coffee beans that you throw on top. And I know, Julia, you noted that in your email to us with the recipe, but I also read that online. That's kind of standard practice with the espresso martinis and the different coffee martinis you might get. And I know I did that last time I made one as well. But it's just a nice little, if you want an effect, when you shake up the coffee martini in a shaker, and then strain it in. Usually there's a nice little foam layer on the top if you kind of pour it swiftly. And it'll float right on there, and you'll see like a little kind of island of coffee beans. It's a nice, cool look.
As I always say, it's not a real espresso martini or coffee martini unless there are 3 coffee beans on the top. So
and that's perfect because yes, coffee beans, like I said, are used for divination. So you can use the beans afterwards, use them with like a little Ouija board or, whatever it is you want to do for your Halloween party.
I'm very superstitious and very believe that there's ghosts out there. So I'm not going to do that. I don't want to know who's hanging around.
Yeah, no Ouija boards for Nick.
Oh, man. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the appletini that you made?
Yes. Did you want me to make it live or do we just talk about it?
Oh, actually, you made the pumpkin spice, right? Let's go through that first, and then we can make the appletini live. And then we'll get into our candy pairing. So stick around so you can hear some of those.
I love it. Sorry, just to mention really quickly, but I want the appletini. I was like, at the very least, green cocktail is just so perfect for this time of year. It just looks so spooky. And this is a really nice green color. So I'm excited for that one. So like I said, I already have kind of a pumpkin spice cocktail that I did in my book, but I wanted to create another variation. And there's some other additives in here. So there's 2 ounces of vanilla vodka in this concoction. You can just do normal vodka. You can throw a vanilla bean into your vodka, and then you have those associations of vanilla that we talked with sweetening, abundance, purification, things like that, as well as, vodka is going to depend on what your vodka is made out of, but really good for clarity. And then we have a 1/2 ounce of amaretto, which is an almond liqueur. Almond is really associated with money, luck, and healing. And then a 1/2 ounce of pumpkin spice syrup. So I made one using another blog. I'm probably going to make my own, but the idea was also that you can use the pumpkin spice syrup that Proof offers. And what's lovely about that is if you want to do homemade pumpkin spice lattes, you're good to go. Once you have that syrup, you can do pumpkin spice everything. And pumpkin is really associated with abundance, a lot of, goddess or feminine, quote unquote, energy worship, money, healing. I also put in a little bit of cinnamon schnapps because I wanted, and also this is an abundance cocktail, right? So you get Goldschlager, which is cinnamon flavored, and you have the gold flakes in there. You got the manifestation galore for money and prosperity, but cinnamon's really used for spiritual heightening, success, money, abundance. And then 1/2 and 1/2, which is also associated. I did a 1/2 ounce of 1/2 and 1/2, but it's associated with, love, spirituality, and all of that. So this is a great concoction for bringing in wealth and abundance and spiritual heightening. And you can kind of, vary it per what you don't do and don't have. So maybe instead of cinnamon, throw in some fresh cinnamon from your spice closet.
Awesome. And now I wish we were together right now because I'm about out of my cocktails, but why don't we do a live making of the apple teeny so you can kind of show us everything, walk us through the process while you're doing it, and we can see kind of how a real, true cocktail artist does it live in the flesh.
I love it. And you know what I might try and do? You guys can tell me if this is not okay, but if I put it right by the microphone, then we might get a little bit of ASMR as I'm.
There you go.
Yes.
We'll soundbite it, put it out on YouTube.
Everyone listening to it on Spotify and Apple will get the full experience. So definitely walk us through it while you go.
I love it. So just to talk a little bit about the back story of it is obviously I wanted a green cocktail, but then additionally, I wanted something, this is called Witch's Wand for a reason. There's a lot of associations in this drink that are things related to witchcraft practices in particular. So the base of this, we're going to do 3/4 ounce of bourbon. If you don't like bourbon, you can, let me pour this. Try doing, vanilla vodka again, but the bourbon particularly is aged in oak barrels besides grains and grain harvest being used in that Samhain and Halloween related for the last harvest of the year. But the oak barrels, oak is particularly magical. It's used for protection, health, money. I mean, everything you can think of. It's really good for protection against lightning, but used in luck and manifestations. That was a great one to put in there. And then, I'm sorry, I have to grab this. Give me 1 second. I have to break the ASMR moment because my bottles are out of reach.
And while we wait, I noticed, Julia, you just, I don't know if you can hear us right now, but I noticed you just used a different tool called, I believe it's called a jigger. It came with the cocktail set that I ordered off Amazon. But I noticed a little bit of an issue with it. It is a 1 ounce and a 2 ounce, the one that I got, but the cups are both shaped like cones. So how do you take that and manage trying to get different different measurements out of it?
So let me get closer to my mic here. The one that you have is kind of one that I would say is for bartenders or craft cocktail enthusiasts. Because the first one I bought when I first started bartending actually shows the measurements in it. So when you're learning, it's not so great to have one that doesn't have the increments on it. So that's just an unfortunate case for you. You can pour it into like a shot glass that is an ounce. I mean, thing is, bartenders, we know counts. We know, we're so used to pouring that, like, I don't need something that's measured anymore. I know where it's going to rest at because I've developed that sense. And the one I have is 1 ounce on one side and 1.5 ounces on the other, which I personally love, but it depends, some bars use a typical 2 ounce port, which you may want. So if you can, maybe invest in a proper jigger. This one's by, I don't know how to pronounce the company's name. I don't want to embarrass myself on this podcast. So it's OXO. And
I call it OXO. I have different.
I always called it OXO. So if I was wrong,
I don't know. I mean, you could call it a mirage of things, but so this is the one that I have is shows the increments on there. I actually want to get the one that you have. That's next on my list. Next, we're going to do 1 ounce of sour apple schnapps. You can try just using apple liqueur if you like, but I wanted the electric green color, so I wanted to do the sour apple brand. And then apple is associated with love, healing. There's a lot of love divination that people actually do around Halloween associated with apples. It also is associated with wisdom. You think an apple a day keeps the doctor away, so longevity, but particularly magic, because when you cut the apple right across, you get a perfect pentagram, a 5-pointed star, which is associated in witchcraft traditions with the 5 spiritual elements of earth, wind, fire, water, and spirit. So it's a super magical ingredient. an ounce of that. Then we're going to do a half ounce of lemon. Lemon is associated with the moon. It's great for purification, longevity, joy, just positive vibes we can all use now.
And do you make your own lemon juice?
Oh my God, yes. Sorry.
I was just curious because I saw the blank bottle. I was like, she definitely makes her own.
Absolutely. I pre-juice before I do anything live. That's so funny because it didn't occur to me until I saw someone leave a review of my book that people would read my book and then they would go buy pre-bought. And I was like, oh my God, my craft cocktail bartender snob. So, do what works best for you always. But just do fresh if you can. It tastes so much better. It makes such a difference. But, again, do what you can. Then we are going to do a half ounce of our vanilla simple. Where did I put it?
And again, while Julie is finding that, if you don't, obviously, I don't know if a lot of people will be able to find it. I don't know if it exists, but I went to the liquor store. I got simple, it was simple syrup, just whatever the cheap store brand was. And I used a half ounce of that and mixed in a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract, which most people have in your baking jar, baking cabinet, whatever you have. Mix it around and it did just the job.
Perfect. So yes, and I just did it at home with just a vanilla bean that I had on hand. So vanilla simple, already simple syrup is going to be sweetening people up to us, right? Sugar, purification, protection, neutralization, and love. And then we have the vanilla element, which just enhances that. Then we're going to go ahead and do walnut bitters. Now I chose Black Walnut Bitters by Fee Brothers. I love this one. It's just, if you aren't allergic to nuts, this is great to use in old fashions, but particularly because walnut is another tree that witches will actually use for their wands. So it's a nice other addition there. Again, mental abilities, granting wishes, protection and grounding. So I'm going to do 2 dashes of that.
So before we go further on that, you mentioned old fashions and that triggered me right away. I'm a whiskey guy. So typically I'm familiar with the Angostura orange bitters. That's what I always use in my old fashions when I make them at home. And whenever I see them out in a cocktail menu, it's usually the orange bitter. So do you use the walnut in addition to that? Or do you just use the walnut bitters and then use orange rinds or something to get sort of the old fashioned cocktail?
I would do in addition to Angostura, just because there's such a traditional flavor that grants. And quite frankly, if I put 3 dashes of walnut bitters, because I have an old fashioned recipe I learned from one of the bars I worked at that I just make it all the time. We do three dashes of bitters. If it was 3 dashes of walnut bitters, that would just be probably too much walnut for me. So I would, maybe do like 2 dashes of Angostura and 1 dash of walnut, or the vice versa. I do sometimes do orange bitters, but not very often. I like to throw in more eccentric ingredients, or mix up the simple syrup. I'll have to give you my recipe for simple syrups or old fashions, because I love old fashions. They're one of my go-tos.
Definitely. And when I'm drinking whiskey, if I'm not drinking it straight, that's what I go right to. Now, can you also explain real quick, again, sort of bartending school tonight, what you consider a dash?
Yes. So what's lovely about these bitter bottles, if you're getting a craft bitter, lucky you, they usually come with a dropper. So that's going to be a drop. But if you get one of the ones that you might buy like at a Total Wine or your local liquor store, there is kind of like some essential oils. There's a device on the top that controls it. So that way a drop is only let at a time. So dash is just like kind of like one turn of the bottle that lets like a drop out. Basically a dash is a drop, but it has to do with how many times you turn the bottle. So next I am adding in 2 to 4 dashes of rose water. The reason is because I was thinking this is not an essential ingredient always with any of these, improvise to make them work for you, but I was like, what is another witching herb I can use? And there's lots of associations, but rose is one of those typical ones for like glamour, beauty, and things like that. So I wanted to put that in. It's also used for psychic abilities, for healing, divination, and protection as well, if you think of the thorns of the rose. So I wanted to put that in here.
And you listed that as optional. So for somebody who isn't, maybe they don't have the that ingredient, Does it make a big difference in the flavor?
It depends on how much you put in. So I don't want too much rose in this. I mean, this, to be quite frank, and we'll pour this and we'll try it again. I'd probably put rose on the top because I want that aroma to greet me and to be the first thing that greets my way into the apple. The rose and the walnut might conflict each other a little bit. So I'm going to put some rose water on top to kind of greet and set the aroma going forward, especially with the proof syrups. I wonder with their walnut syrup, which again could be used as a replacement for the walnut and vanilla here. That might be, I wonder how that would taste with the rose water, but it's not, none of these are essential. I'm just talking you through, for people listening, why I put these together. Do what works best for you. You can look up a typical appletini recipe online and look at mine and change it up to what works with what you have accessible.
All right. So
Next.
I think, there you go. Keep going.
Oh,
I was going to ask, after we're done with this, being a kind of a history and culture nerd, I want you to walk us through a little bit about what Halloween, like this, I believe you called it Samhain, the significance of that in sort of the witchcraft community. But let's finish the cocktail first, and then we'll go into that.
I'm going to do a 1/4 ounce of elderflower. That's another really magical witching herb. You could do something with elderberries if you like, but elderflower is really just associated with the fae or the fairies, obviously people not interested in witchcraft. This isn't like your kindergarten fairy art, you drew while in class. It's a totally different history and lore behind the fae that we talk about in witchcraft. But elder is really good for purification, healing, protection, prosperity. So great addition. If you want, you can try adding a little bit of cinnamon. Since I'm doing this again, why the F not?
So when you're adding in a whole ingredient, say you're making some sort of a cocktail with berries or with apples or any sort of citrus that actually you put part of that fruit or part of that ingredient in, are you straining that out before you pour it into the glass?
Oh yeah, most definitely. This is going to be shaken and strained. So when you're adding, definitely if I'm something like cinnamon, I don't want a bunch of cinnamon bits unless I'm doing like on top of whipped cream, which is delicious, but I don't want a bunch of, cinnamon pieces floating around. So it is to be strained. I'm going to add ice. And then we're going to go ahead and put this in our shaker. This is a shaken and strained cocktail. You can use a Boston shaker. You can use the mason jar. Just be careful. Now I'm going to go ahead and strain this. Oh my God, it smells so good. Go ahead and strain into your glass. And then I'm going to taste it as is and then see about adding rose water on top as well. Oh my God, that's so delicious.
Making me jealous.
And you guys can't see because glass reasons, but it is an electric green color. Here, let me put it into another glass.
And we will be releasing the video of this one so everyone can see all these cocktails.
Oh, really?
Yep. And I know I've been sipping on mine and I've been showing on the camera too. So, yep.
Are you sure you want to release the video version?
Oh, yeah. We'll do it. Unless you're against it.
Well, I don't know. I am. And the reason is because I realized I didn't have proper glassware with me. So I literally just poured this into my shaker and then into a piece of plastic.
No worries. That's fine.
Have the actual... what you have, that's just how it works.
Bianca's wearing her spiderweb shirt and everything. She's all festive. We got to release it. It's fine.
Well, if you guys edit it, I can quickly redo it.
No, that's not necessary. It looked great. We're authentic here. Come on, it's 9 p.m. over here. We're all, just tagging.
Okay.
Okay, well, no one judge me.
This would be in a proper glass. in a coupe glass or martini glass. I just did a presentation right before getting on this podcast, so I didn't have certain things accessible to me, so I improvised a little bit. So do as I say, not as I do.
No one's gonna judge you. Anyone, if you really want to see a great cocktail, go to the Witchcraft Cocktails Instagram or blog or anything. You'll see pictures of beautiful cocktails and nice glassware. Tonight we're just shaking them up and drinking them. That's the way we're doing it. So
Yes.
no judging tonight.
I especially love your hand glass.
Oh yeah. The one I showed earlier, or like, did you?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And on that note, I couldn't find my vanilla simple, so I just put agave in here, which is delicious. So if you're wondering why I did that, you can improvise.
Whatever works.
Yeah, this is a really nice tangy citrus concoction. I love it a lot. It has all those magical associations with, a witch's wand and magic and blessings, and it's just delicious.
So as I kind of teased before when you were mixing up the cocktail, why don't you take us a little bit through, as you call it, Samhain, and how Halloween and this sort of holiday, this time of year, is significant in the witchcraft community?
Absolutely. So, it's really varied. Samhain, obviously in the Northern Hemisphere, astrologically is going to be different than the Southern Hemisphere. They're going to be celebrating Beltane, which is another holiday at this time. I will say that cultures across this globe at this time of year worship the dead. It's just a cross-cultural thing that people do around this time, and that has to do with, the harvest and the passing of the seasons. But another layer of it is, so there's astrological Samhain, which is kind of the cross-quarter day between the solstices, or I should say between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. Samhain should astrologically be right smack in the middle, which would put it at 15 degrees of Scorpio for those that know astrology. Now, that's not on the 31st, but that's a few days later. But on the 31st is when we typically celebrate, you can think All Hallows Eve, Day of the Dead. And Samhain in particular, the name comes from Celtic or, ancient on, England and practices along there that people have kind of adapted and taken that name to represent the holiday altogether.
All right. Yeah. And now to get into more traditional American Halloween, let's get into some candy pairings with each of these cocktails.
I mean, every good cocktail has some sort of candy pairing.
Absolutely. Oh, am I supposed to do the candy pairings, or do you have them?
So I prepared some. I figured we just talk on this. I'll be honest with you. I was talking to my girlfriend on the phone today trying to figure these out. It's a lot harder than it sounds when you're trying to pair these cocktails, these complex cocktails, with the simple candies that you might find on the shelf at your local convenience store or something. But we'll kind of go down the list here that you sent us. We'll start with the Black Sun, which is the spicy margarita with ghost tequila. And in the theme of spicy, this is, shout out Alex, this is her suggestion, atomic fireballs. If you want to make it as spicy as possible,
Oh my
would
God.
definitely go well with it. And then I also thought maybe something, it is a margarita, it is citrusy and fruity. So maybe something like a Starburst, specifically orange, yellow, and red, would pair well best with this. But that's what I would go with that one. Any thoughts from you two on what you would like to chew on while you're drinking this cocktail?
I have a giant sweet tooth, so I feel sorry if anyone takes my advice, because I'd probably just heap on the sugar. Now, it depends on what version you do. You did that with the lemon, so lemonade variation. But if I did blood orange has such a nice depth of flavor to it that I'd probably choose, like, I don't know the name of this candy. This takes me back to when, just years ago, like the 90s. There's like this red strawberry hard candy that you'd bite into that would have an inside. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea what the name of it is, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
So that's what I would personally, it just comes straight to mind for me, is that one.
I don't know. I think spicy and spicy would be too much for me. So I would probably go sweet and spicy and do some dark chocolate. I think dark chocolate and spice is incredible together. So I'd probably go with some sort of like a dark chocolate sea salt deal, extra dark with that spicy sip and a dark decadent bite. That would be my pairing.
And this might be cheating, but I know there's those the cocktail and drink flavored gummy bears. I don't know if anyone's ever had those. I know Bianca, I believe you gave me a gift of the Corona
The sugar
package.
fina. I love those.
Sugar
I
fina,
always have those.
the Corona package, the Corona one. If you take the Corona and the lime gummy bears, mash them up in your mouth, those would also go awesome with this being a lime-based drink, not being a margarita. To move on into the next one, the appletini. This one was tough for me. The sour, like a Sour Patch Kid or something, because it is sour. It does have the lemon in it, the sour apple schnapps, something like that might be good with it. But outside of traditional candy, I'm gonna cheat here and I'm gonna say like a candy green apple would be awesome to drink with that one. I didn't have a chance to make and taste that one yet, but that's probably where my head would be at.
I love it. I'm so surprised that was hard for you because I'm immediately like Jolly Rancher. Hello, sour apple, Jolly Rancher.
Jolly Ranchers. That would be
and
a great one.
Caramel apple. Hello. And if you do a caramel sauce, you can put it around the outside of the glass. Now, everyone, I want you to forget what you saw me do earlier. If you saw it, this is what your appletini should look like. Okay.
There it is.
I love it. Perfect.
And all its green glory.
Yeah. So I think a caramel apple would be lovely with this. That's what I would go with.
I am with you, and I honestly think I would probably go with the little bullseye caramels, just like one of those little tiny, just bite-sized caramels, perfect with a sip of apple, because I love caramel apples, so I'm totally on board with that. And then you get that kind of like a spice, like, or not spice, sour, like perk flavor in your mouth, and then you have that nice soft flavor of the caramel that kind of pairs well with that.
I don't think it's very controversial in this. I know a lot of things if I said I didn't like, but I don't like a bullseye. I don't think they're that good. So I'm not going to roll with that one.
We're talking about cheesy Halloween candy. So that's the direction I'm moving in next.
You might as well go flavorless candy corn on that one. But
ouch.
Let's go into the pumpkin spice
That's
martini.
debatable. I don't know if candy corn can be considered flavorless. A lot of people like it. Just saying.
The pumpkin spice martini. I completely drew a blank with this one. This one's tough because there's no pumpkin candies that I could associate with it, as far as I know. But realistically, if I think pumpkin, and I'm going to kind of steer away from super pumpkin spice, like think your pumpkin spice lattes that you'll get at Starbucks or wherever, and go more of a simple pumpkin flavor. I'm going to pair that up something mellow, sort of creamy like chocolate, and I'm going Reese's. You're still going to keep the orange with the Reese's cups and the peanut butter, and it's still going to be super tasty, and I can eat a Reese's cup with just about anything, but that's going to be my pairing. But maybe you guys have come up with something better than I have.
That's so funny. I didn't think of a Reese's cup, but that does sound like that would complement well. I'm thinking pumpkin. I mean, it's pumpkin season, and can I swear? Is it okay? Are you guys swear on here? Okay, I fucking love pumpkin. I'm a basic witch, so pumpkin bread would be great with this, because also the bread. This is a really like this variation of the pumpkin martini is thinner. It's not as thick since we're not using like fresh pumpkin in it that I would typically do. So the pumpkin bread is a nice complement for grounding. I know that's not candy, but whatever. So that's my
We'll allow it. It's still really fall based. It fits in the season. We'll allow it.
I was gonna say the same thing. I'm going with like a cinnamon sugar donut, like one of those little tiny ones. Just like a nice bite of that with a pumpkin.
Cinnabon, that would be perfect.
Again, not candy, but we'll allow it because of the season.
If I'm going with candy, I'd probably have to resort to chocolate again, because that's what I always lean towards, and just go with like a chocolate covered pretzel or something with a little bit of salt. And
jumping back to it, actually, while I'm here, the Black Sun margarita, I just thought of this. Recently, Bianca and I took a trip to Stowe, Vermont, and there was Lake Champlain Chocolatiers, and they had a spicy Aztec chocolate that they had. It was, again, getting back into spicy. Chocolate with pepper in it, and that would pair perfectly with that margarita. And I think I could pair that with the pumpkin spice martini as well on that too, going with chocolate and a little bit of spice. Different kind of spice than the pumpkin spice, but still spice. Coffee Ouija martini. This one, I had a little trouble at first until I made it and tasted it. At first, I was thinking something like maybe a Snickers, something that, basic candy. It's got a lot of flavor, got that caramel, got that chocolate. Sort of goes along with coffee. Not a ton of coffee candies out there. Those chocolate covered coffee beans that you get for breaking up taste testing. Not a great candy to just eat. But now that I've tasted it, I'm going to switch my choice, and I'm actually going to go with the Heath bar. I think a Heath bar would be awesome to pair up with this cocktail based on how the flavors match up.
I'm on board with that. That's a good one.
That is a good one. I like that. Because I was thinking like, oh, chocolate covered espresso bean, but that works as well. I think I'd also go along the route of a Tootsie Roll. And then the root beer hard candies, whatever those are called.
Yep.
That's probably what I would
Yeah,
do.
those are good.
Tootsie Roll's a great one too. Yeah, I just think that sort of that toffee type flavor would be really good, really well paired with this.
I mean, I'm torn because I think it's not technically candy, but I always buy those little mini like Nani's biscottis, and that's like my go-to with coffee. And I think I would do the same with an espresso martini. So I feel like those go together. But if I'm not allowed to pair that because it's not technically candy, I feel like that's kind of hard. I'd probably go with like a Kit Kat.
I love Kit Kats.
Again, I could eat a Kit Kat with anything too. Kit Kats are delicious.
That's true. Eat those anytime with anything, without anything, it's fine.
It's dangerous. I don't need to think about candy right now.
None of us do. I haven't even bought any yet because I'm like, I'm gonna eat it all. So
yeah, well, and also this year you don't know how many trick-or-treaters you're gonna get. So if you're left all of it to yourself.
Last year we had one at our apartment. So with everything going on this year, I am expecting 0. But I guess we'll see how it plays out as we get into it. Maybe people are eager to get out there and get outside.
Yeah. So now I have 2 cocktails. I've got the pumpkin spice and
I started with 2. I ended up with 3. I know I made one for my girlfriend as well, but she wasn't a huge fan of it. She didn't like the gin. And about halfway through this, I'm sure y'all saw in the background, my girlfriend shuttled me and the rest of hers, and I finished that one too.
I was wondering what she was doing.
I triple fisted it today. Endless cocktails. And I also managed to spill one all over myself. So you probably saw me wiping that down if you're watching the video.
So you're just making up for that with the third one. You're fine.
Exactly. Yeah. Make it up for it.
But so essentially everyone watching is going to get a lot of behind the scenes stuff because I didn't know we were putting the video up. So I'm like, well, shit, what else did happen?
Well, we were talking about this actually with another cocktail artist we were talking with last night. He wrote a book, J.M. Hirsch, Shake, Strain, Done. That's going to be coming out soon. We were chatting with him and we were talking about how, I guess, difficult to use the martini glass is. It's the most spillable glass I've ever seen in my life. I'm just getting into the cocktail game. I picked up some martini glasses, figured it'd be an essential. And whenever I make a cocktail, it's filled to the rim and I'm walking down this house, walking through the apartment trying to
anybody who's ever waitress knows that people who order martinis, they taste great, but they're the worst to carry to a table.
It's every time I've seen a martini bar, it's always that nice like iced over bar that people stand right up at. The bartender gets to reach right over, and it makes complete sense. Why? Because it seems like an impossible glass not to spill a little out of.
I was so lucky because I am terrified of using trays, and it makes me wonder how I got through being a bartender for as many years as I did. Part of it is you're stuck behind the bar, so the servers take it all up for you or your bar back. But a lot of the places I worked didn't actually use trays, like True Food Kitchen. You'd kind of have to be able to hand it all yourself. So I would never use a tray in my life.
Yeah, they're not very fun to carry.
I could not deliver on a martinis on a tray, that's for sure. The margarita that I didn't have a margarita glass for, but I threw in my tumbler glass, that I could do. Only filled it up about halfway. That was unspillable. But the martini is definitely difficult. Although delicious, so worth it. But put it in a different glass.
Like a coupe glass. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. And that's exactly what Jam actually suggested as well. And I see you got the martini glass there, sipping it like an expert.
This is a little different.
Oh, yeah.
You only saw
my friend is moving, and so she gave me these antique glasses, which God, I pray I do not break these. So these aren't exactly like they're very, very low to the ground, thank God.
That's good. And they got a
Easy
nice
to hold.
shape to them to kind of hold everything down in there. Instead of that triangle, it's got sort of a curve down at the bottom there, like a margarita glass hood with that little knob, kind of hold everything in. But all right, Julia, I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight. Is there anything else you want to leave off with about your cocktails or about Halloween in general before we break tonight?
No, you guys just have fun. Happy Halloween. There's so much stuff happening in the skies. We've got a blue moon, which happens once every 28 years, and Mercury retrograde if you pay attention to astrology, and all kinds of fun things. So make sure you have a good drink because you may just need it.
And
Only
Halloween
20,
on a
man.
Saturday. Probably don't need to work on Sunday. So
Oh, you're working on Sunday.
No,
Oh
no,
my
no, no.
God.
I'm not. I'm saying
Oh.
people probably won't have to. A lot of times Halloween happens on a weeknight.
Yep,
but
that is
this
true.
year, not the case. Too bad
Halloween at
COVID
home.
ruined it for everyone, or everyone would be out
Yeah.
partying at the bars.
Well, thank you so much for having me, you guys.
We had such a great time. Thank you again for coming on. Cheers. We're looking forward to make the only other two cocktails that I haven't made yet are the pumpkin spice and the appletini, but I look forward to making those soon. And even if you don't get to make them by Halloween, it's still definitely a good fall cocktail, no matter what season or what type of year you're drinking it in.
Yeah.
But again, cheers. Thank you for coming back
Zdrowia.
on.
Cheers. Be sure to follow us on social at Uncorked Corner and on the blog at uncorkedcorner.com for a taste of more food and beverage content.
And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe, rate, and review on whatever podcast platform you prefer. Thanks for listening.